All right, hi everybody. Welcome back to the Green Malt. I'm Chris, and this is going to be part 4 of my 4-part review on 12-year-old blended Scotch whiskey. There was a bit of a gap there between parts 1 and 2, but we're trying to blast through to the end at this point. I just finished recording the review of Syndicate 58.6, and I'm not sure if I'm going to append that directly to this review or whether I'll split them. Probably split them. But I just finished wrapping that one up, and now we're going to move on to the last of the 4, that being the very well-known, ever-present Johnnie Walker Black Label. Before we get into that, real quick, just to recap, we did a Duncan Taylor 12-year-old blended whiskey, super easy to drink, very approachable, interesting enough that I still enjoy drinking it now, but I think if you gave it to a total newcomer to whiskey, they'd be able to really enjoy it as well. Next up, you've got the Black Bull 12-year-old, also by Duncan Taylor. Far more aggressive, higher alcohol percentage, more complex, heavier sherry influence, but probably not for your truly novice whiskey drinkers. Like I said, I just finished talking about, in my time anyway, about 15 minutes ago, just talking about the Syndicate 58.6 blended whiskey. Still easy to drink. Not quite as light in profile as the Duncan Taylor 12. It's got a very heavy sherry influence, so it's very rich, very sweet. If you're looking for something sweet, it can be potentially an entry point for people. It's so syrupy and rich though that it probably wouldn't be my first suggestion. But if you want a dessert malt, if you're craving something that's got that deep sherry, chocolatey, nutty note to it, give it a go. It's a little bit of a higher price point, but I think it's still worth a try anyway. And then that brings us to part 4, the granddaddy of them all, the Johnnie Walker, hefty bottle of Johnnie Walker 12-year-old Black Label whiskey. I've got myself a wee little dram here, so just a touch of water in it because this is bottled at 40% alcohol by volume, and it's built by default to be approachable and easy to drink, so it doesn't need a lot of water to go down easily. And what is there to say really about Johnnie Walker Black Label that anybody watching this probably doesn't already know, right? Back in my first video I talked about Johnnie Walker Green Label, and I hope, it's been a while now, I hope I gave some background on Diageo and a little bit of background on the Johnnie Walker brand, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing that. We all know who Johnnie Walker is as a brand, right? It's everywhere in the world. I think the #1 mix for a lot of whiskey drinks is probably Johnnie Walker Red Label. You might see Black Label in there as well, but it's a little bit of a higher price point. So as far as bars go, Red Label is usually the go-to. This is a 1-liter bottle, but I think a 750-liter bottle these days in Ontario runs about $60. So it's not terribly expensive, but it's, it would fall somewhere between Black Bull and the Duncan Taylor 12 on the price spectrum here. It'd be probably the second cheapest of all these bottles. But it's not terribly cheap, but it's not terribly expensive. And I think that's kind of a sentiment I'm going to express a lot in talking about Black Labels. It's not this, it's also not that, it's somewhere in the middle, right? And that's kind of because that's what Diageo is going for. All blended whiskeys are blended for the sake of consistency. That's usually what it comes down to. You've got a number of products that might exhibit certain characteristics of what you want, but they don't, as a single malt or as a single barrel, they don't really say, they don't have the experience that you're looking for as a blender, as a producer. So what do? You blend a bunch of things together until you can get that consistent product. And that's exactly what Diageo has mastered here, right? They have a product that is shipped en masse around the world, and its experience is going to be the same bottle to bottle to bottle. There's something to be said for that. Now, if the experience was crap, that'd be a different story. But for me, like a lot of people, this was my entry point into whiskey, and it captured my attention. It was the bottle that I felt like I could go to if somebody asked me, hey, Chris, do you drink whiskey? And at that time, I might have been like a 21-year-old that barely could handle a bottle of Miller Genuine Draft. But I knew that if I didn't want to own up to the fact that hard liquor made me sick, I could ask for a glass of this, even if it was over ice. And, and I'd come away sipping it slowly, yes, but I'd come away actually enjoying it a little bit and feeling fine at the end of the day because it's just that easy and approachable a drink. I mean, that was years ago now, and at this point, I'm looking for things that are a little bit more complex, a little bit more challenging, and certainly a lot punchier than a Johnnie Walker Black Label, but that's what got me initially. And I think that occupies an important place in the market, right? We don't all jump into whiskey. We don't jump into anything in the deep end as human beings. We have to ease our way into things. We have to learn. We have to develop a palate and figure out what this stuff actually is. And that's what this bottle does so well. The Duncan Taylor 12-year-old, I said it was a very easy and approachable bottle, and it is. But surprisingly enough, the Johnnie Walker Black Label offers a little bit more breadth of experience. And that's just because of the range of whiskeys that go into this blend. I have no clue how many different single malt scotches or single grain whiskeys get blended together to produce this. I don't know that anybody out of Diageo does, but it's a lot. My first video in talking about Johnnie Walker Green Label is one of my, still to this day, favorite go-to whiskeys if I'm just sitting at home on a cool evening and I want something approachable and warm and still a little bit challenging. That has 4 single malt scotches that are blended together to produce that green label, and they're identified on the packaging so you know what they are. You can try to figure out what goes into the Johnnie Walker Black Label. You'll have a sense of what it is, right? We know what distilleries Diageo owns, so we'll have an idea of what goes into this, but in what proportions and what exactly those distilleries are that get blended together, who knows? What we do know is at the end of the day, it comes out to this very impressive, in its ubiquity anyway, product, right? Comes out with this very unnatural orange color. It's colored, it's filtered, it's blended to within an inch of its life, and at the end of the day, this is what we got. So what is it? It's round. If there's one word that comes to mind when I think about Johnnie Walker Black, it's round, and that's because it has no harsh edges whatsoever. On the nose, you get a little bit of sweetness. You get some like a sense of rich cream, just a sense, and you get a hint of smoke. Very light, very gentle. Nothing approaching aggression. Nothing approaching anything harsh. There's no alcoholic burn. There's only a gentle hint of fruit that might be underlying it there, but it's so muddled, right? It's vague. It hints at things, but it doesn't define them sharply. So I say round, right? But that's what it is. It's really actually. I don't want to sound like I'm being condescending. I don't want to sound like I'm attacking this, because I actually, right now, just nosing it now, am enjoying it. Like it's nice. It really is. It's just it's so clearly a product that has an intent behind it, and it's achieved it. It's achieved an approachability that borders on the miraculous. Okay, maybe that's a little hyperbolic, but it's really approachable. But I don't have a lot to say about it because, like I said, it's undefined to my nose anyway, which is admittedly not the best in the business. So this has been in the glass for, at this point, 10, 15 minutes, just a drop of water, and only a drop because it doesn't really need it except to open it up a little bit. And I'll say it, I've said it already on this recording, I'll probably say it one more time before I'm done, but it's remarkable to me. This whiskey that brought me into the world of Scotch, even now, sipping it, nosing it, trying to parse through the flavors, I struggle. I'll be honest with you, I do struggle to pick out particular flavor notes with this whiskey, but that doesn't mean I don't still enjoy drinking it neat. They've blended it. Like the blenders at Diageo, they know their business. They've done it very well. It probably helps that I enjoy a lot of the constituent single malts that have some presence in this. I'm sure things like um, Cragganmore, things like Talisker and Lagavulin, what proportion of the whiskey they actually represent in the blend, who the heck knows? It's probably very small, but I've no doubt they do contribute some of the subtle smoke, some of the creamy texture to the body of this whiskey that I do so enjoy in their single malt representations and enjoy in the blend as well, because that's what it is. The sweet, soft smoke on the nose is still there on the palate. It gets you right away. There's a creaminess, a richness to it that is a matter of degrees lower than the green label, the 15-year-old green label. Everything I enjoy about that is probably present here, just dialed way back. And I mean, you would expect that in a cheaper bottle, right? So it's a little bit sweet, almost like a artificial sweetener sweetness immediately. Caramel comes to mind. Maybe that's just the caramel coloring on the brain, but that is what comes to mind. That subtle smokiness, that vague sense of maybe a little bit of a grapiness, a little bit of a fresh apple perhaps. But it is so buried underneath the subtle smoke, the sweetness. Those are the two things that just carry through. Anything else is down there underneath somewhere. There isn't much of a development, if I'm honest. There's something a little bit nutty. I think that's, like I said, that the creamy nuttiness I associate with the Cragganmore single malts. That's what I get in the development here. But beyond that, I don't know. There's not a lot. It's a little bit of a cereal note. Towards the finish, there's nothing spicy about this. There's nothing. The smokiness sort of dies away through the development. It leaves you a little bit dry and short on the end. There's something slightly acrid, slightly ethanol-y on there, and a little bit of that sort of, for anyone that's ever, I mean, I don't smoke as a rule, but I mean, anyone who's ever experimented with cigarettes and then you're left sort of smacking your lips as a non-smoker, right? You got that thing in the back of your throat. Slight sense of that back there. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's the tar. I don't know if it's just the smoke itself. That's the sense I get. But that's me really nitpicking, because these are very subtle, small things. I'm just trying to find some kind of notes to talk about. Beyond that, it's unremarkable, perhaps is the best way to put it. It's easy, it's approachable, it's, like I said earlier, it's rounded, there's no harsh edges. You really have to hunt for any flavor notes, in my experience anyway. It's just, it's sweet, it's smoky, it's creamy. It's Johnnie Walker. I mean, what more is there to say? I'm not going to belabor the point. That is what it is. I don't even know if it deserves a score. Not because it's bad, but because what's the point? It is such a multifaceted product as far as what you can use it for. I would drink it neat happily. I am now, and I'll finish this and I'll enjoy it. You can, if you prefer it over ice, that's fine too. It might knock down a few of those few flavor notes that actually exist in a neat scotch, or at least a neat pour of the Johnnie Walker Black label, but that's fine. It works perfectly well. It also works great in a mixed drink. I don't know. I'm not going to bother. It's good stuff. It's cheap. It's affordable. I will always make sure I have it in my liquor cabinet, because if I have people coming over, it serves so many purposes. It's not my favorite of the four, these four whiskeys here. If I had to pick a favorite, it would be the Black Bull. That's me. I'm somebody that likes whiskey that's a little bit more aggressive, these days anyway. If I had to pick a whiskey to introduce a newcomer to Scotch, it might be the Black Label. I'm a little bit torn right now because I do think the Duncan Taylor 12-year-old is such a great entry whiskey for people because it is so unthreatening in every way. But it's much harder to find than this, right? I mean, if you're in small town anywhere, you can probably find a bottle of this and you can get it for your father-in-law or something who doesn't really drink scotch, but you'll enjoy it. Uh, yeah, you know what? Let's leave it at that. Blended whiskeys are an interesting beast. They're meant by their very nature to be approachable. They're meant by their very nature to be, well, I shouldn't say that because they aren't all meant by their nature to be approachable, but they're all meant to be blended together to achieve a certain consistent goal that might not otherwise be evident in a single batch release. And I think all these whiskeys do their jobs as intended and do it well. I would happily accept a glass of any of these four, and I would recommend any of those four to anyone inquiring about them. The Johnnie Walker Black Label, the Syndicate 58.6, the Black Bull, and the Duncan Taylor 12-year-old, sorry. They're all worth your time. They all come in at different price points. Cheapest, second cheapest, Black Bull being the third cheapest, and the Syndicate 58.6 being your most expensive. Give them all a try. If the reason I did this to begin with was because there's such a fixation in the whiskey world on single malt scotches that I did want to speak out a little bit about blended whiskey. It's not all just mixed drink fodder. It's not all just bland, because I think that's often the impression that people get these days, and not without good reason historically. But there's good blended whiskey out there that is worth your time. And I just encourage people to give it a try when they can. So that's it. Sorry, no score on the Johnnie Walker Black Label, but like I said, I don't think it really needs one. I think we all know what it's all about. Anyway, I'm going to finish up my Johnnie Walker Black Label, and I'll see you guys next time with a single malt scotch, no question about it. Till then, cheers.